Welcome everybody to another episode of Fantasy Schnoz. I am your disheveled goblin host Daniel Green, and today I'm gonna start with just a small tangent, if you will let me be so indulgent, because I've had a small influx of comments asking why I tend to avoid covering certain franchises. Like there could have been a ton of Star Wars news over the last month covered here on the channel, or perhaps even Marvel/DC. And I really wish I could give you a better answer aside from one, there are a ton of other channels who like entirely devote themselves to those franchises and do a far better job than I ever could of covering DC, Marvel, Star Wars. But on top of that, they take up so much air in the fantasy space. I don't really have a better way to put it aside from the fact that I just don't really want to continue to inflate that. I like to give attention to, yes, tons of other huge hardcore fantasy franchises like Game of Thrones, Cosmere, Lord of the Rings, etc., etc. But those are included for a specific reason. They are more hardcore fantasy, trying to avoid sounding super snobby and sucky, and inspire me to be passionate, nerdy, and creative. Well, the other stuff kind of just feels exhausting. I actually would fold Harry Potter for obvious reasons, and a couple other maybe considered like hardcore fantasy franchises into that category for me. But I really can't give you a better answer aside from just personal preference and maybe being oddly resentful as a fan for no really good reason for how much those faces have become what people think of for fantasy. So that's really the answer. It's not a great one, but it's true to my soul. So without any further ado, let us go ahead and jump on into the real God's honest truth fantasy news that the big boys at Disney don't want you to hear. That's the way I can phrase it to be slightly more obnoxious. But we're gonna be kicking off this episode of Fantasy News with an emergency update question that begs to be asked, and that is because Matt Dinneman has released the cover for Book 7 in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, a series that in the last year has rocketed itself into my most anticipated releases for the book space, and that is going to be for This Inevitable Ruin. And sound every cat-like alarm that you can. There is no Princess Donut on this cover. Has she been absent from a cover before? I genuinely don't know, and I'm too lazy to check. How dare you ask? But it is concerning with this point of the story that we are in, that Princess Donut is absent. And I must demand, Matt Dinneman, you update us the fans immediately.
Is it safe?
Is she currently residing in a strip club? For those of you who have not read the series, I am talking about a cat, and it fits. Don't worry about it. Matt, I will not give my opinions on this cover until you update us on the status of Princess Donut. I am protesting you actively right now. Do you feel it? You should.
No, it's just the way it's breaking out, so it's neat.
I just noticed over your shoulder is the words war crime with crime underlined.
I will say it's the name of a spell.
Name of a spell, cool.
A donut gets.
Oh, wow. For those who are new to Dungeon Crawler Carl, that is a cat.
Carl, you opened your fan box without me?
If you like comedy fantasy, great satire, cannot recommend Dungeon Crawler Carl enough. Absolute blast, and really made me kind of fall in love with the progression fantasy lit RPG space more than I thought I ever would. Let's move on to the next. Oh, cover artist. Cover artist, as always, credit goes to Luciana Fleites. Luciano Fleites. That's why I have help. I'm dyslexic. But this brings us to our next cover reveal for Dance of Shadows by Gaurav Mohanty. This is the exciting follow-up to the first book in the Son of Darkness trilogy, with cover art by Michaela Alciano. The seeds of war are best sown in the season of peace.
Yes, it is a beautiful day.
As much as I love dragons, I mean, we just got an incredible display of dragons in the last episode of House of the Dragon. I won't spoil anything, but it's in contention for greatest on-screen appearance of dragon, big or small, ever. You all know the sequence I'm talking about if you've seen it. My God! But getting back to the point here, what I'm trying to actually say, a close follow-up, close real-world follow-up to being as awe-inspiring as dragons, believe it or not, is elephants. They kind of have the big ear wings, they're massive, even got a trunk included, it's prehensile, meaning they can use it. They're badass. I know like people love elephants in general for a lot of reasons. I don't necessarily agree with the cute thing, aside from when they're babies, they're adorable as babies. But as adults, elephants are badass. I know like war elephants, not exactly practical anymore, and I never advocate for the bringing of unaware of the broader context animals into war situations. That's a bad thing. Don't do that, especially in the modern era. No excuses. That being said though, nope, I forgot my point. Moving on, next news. If you are a James S.A. Corey fan, they have had a novella posted to their publisher's website for their upcoming new series, Captives' War. Humanity's war is eternal, spreading across the galaxy in the ages. Humanity's best hope to end the endless slaughter is the Livesuit forces. Soldiers meld their bodies to the bleeding edge technology, becoming something more than human for the duration of the war that might never end. Livesuit, to be released, maybe a placeholder date, October of this year. The reason I say that, not only is that like really close for a surprisingly small amount of marketing, though it is a novella, could be justified, not sure. Often when I see placeholder dates for books, it's October. Don't know why that's the case. It's a trend I first noticed back when I was still doing this all the way in like college. Anyone in the industry can explain that to me? Why are placeholder dates specifically the 10th month of the year? Something default to that? I was a software engineer. Nothing should default to October. As for the cover included, bold choice. One, okay, I was gonna make like a fake rant about not crediting the cover artist, but I feel like I've played that out, and obviously, you know, cover to be revealed, but how funny would it be if it did just ship with that as the cover?
This is something else.
There is one other book in this series that is currently known, and that would be The Mercy of Gods. And if you were sitting here going, why do I know the name James S.A. Corey, but I can't play, they're the Expanse author. And in my undisputed favorite cover of the day that I'm willing to talk about, Matt, give us the answers. Daw Books has released the cover for the Serpent called Mercy by Roanne Lau. Cover by Rowan Ellis. I've always loved the name Rowan. Great name. Yeah, Kayla just agreed with me. Do you want to name our kid Rowan?
No, because I read a really good book as a kid called Rowan of Rin, and I forever associate that name with that series.
Why don't you want to name a kid Rowan?
Because I just associated with those books, and I want to have.
We're gonna have a long talk about our future son named Rand. Pitched as fans of the tense dynamic action and battle-tested friendships like The Witcher and Squid Game will love the Serpent called Mercy, where a debt-ridden slumdog joins an illegal monster-fighting arena for some fast coin, but quickly learns the most dangerous beasts are outside the ring. And now I need to do a quick fantasy news correction, because there was a mistake made, actually not on my behalf this time, holy God, but instead, actually on behalf of the Broken Binding. I need to clarify the error on this because I saw people tagging me in it saying like, good job. The Broken Binding and Patrick Leo tweeted out some new Sun Eater art that was made in collaboration with myself. That's not entirely true. They actually reached out to me to possibly art direct one of these pieces. I was in the process of this piece like getting created, but ended up saying like, hey, it's not exactly the vision I'm going for. And so I ended up backing off. I wanted something a bit more close on the ground. And instead they went with this epic sweeping shot, which is still like magnificent, but wires got crossed, and in the final marketing, my name got attached when it shouldn't have. This isn't something I cleared or wanted my name necessarily with, even though I think it's great. It just was like literally not what I was going for when I was asked for it. So there's no shade, no nothing like that. but it is really important for me as someone who's hoping to get into art direction in the future to just make it clear and say this is not one of my art direction pieces. I think I maybe selected the scene and that's it. But it's a cool piece, well done broken binding, clarification done, not AD or collaboration with me. They're still great. This isn't like a beef situation.
Unless you want that smoke.
And in a last-minute fantasy news update, we have gotten the cover reveal for the third book in the Empyrean series, or you might refer to it in your head as the Fourth Wing series. Onyx Storm has the cover you are seeing on screen now, and it's fine. I definitely understand people who like this more minimal artistic style where, yeah, it doesn't bring necessarily the same appeal as like going to ArtStation, finding someone like Felix Ortiz and just saying, go nuts. But it strikes a vibe, and with how they're trying to just hit the biggest market possible with these books, with the level of success they've achieved, it makes complete sense to me and is aesthetically pleasing enough. But in some more interesting news I actually wanted to cover tangentially related to this, we have actually seen book sales ticking up this second quarter of 2024, helping mostly recover from the significant drop of over 1.7% we saw in the first quarter of 2024. And it seems that adult fantasy might be helping drive this recovery, with sales of the genre increasing 85% over the equivalent first 6 months of 2023. And as anyone who's paying attention might well be aware, this is largely due to specifically the subgenre of romantasy continuing to grow in popularity. And I am always a bit skeptical with specific book sales numbers, but it seems that, yes, Rebecca Yarros and specifically Sarah J. Maas are at the top of this growth, with Sarah J. Maas's Court of Thorns and Roses alone selling more than 740,000 copies, and Rebecca Yarros' Iron Flame and Fourth Wing selling a combined 1.1 million copies. And we don't often get to see this detailed of numbers. The publication industry is notoriously secretive compared to so many other mediums we do get to see, so I'm feasting right now. I love this stuff. It's nerdy goodness for me. But let me know what you think of this in the comments down below. I, for one, am quite grateful to our romantasy overlords having their heyday right now, helping all the genres, I hope, as interest bleeds out from it, continue to rise. All high tides, etc. insert saying here. Back to the regular news. Moving on from the book news, though, we have been granted a second look at Lord of the Rings' upcoming War of the Rohirrim. And this seems to be directly addressing some of the feedback many fans of Lord of the Rings gave for our first look into the upcoming animated Rohirrim adventure. Looking like a bit of an action shot with a heroine outdoors riding her mighty steed. That certainly reeks of Rohirrim, and also is bright. I don't have too much more to add aside from just saying I'd still like more of a broad, like wider shot. I don't think we've gotten that yet, of like a city, some more setting. Everything's been kind of close up in on the characters, but I like that this is more of an action-y shot with more light, giving us a little more well-rounded view. And if you like 80s B-list fantasy, I'm about to tickle your testes because we have had an announcement for the Phantasy Star franchise. They will be branching into a tabletop role-playing game. Notably, the original game's release in 1987 was one of the earliest cartridge games to include battery-backed RAM for saving your game's position. If you ever had like a Pokemon game that all of a sudden it wouldn't save and like you had to restart every time, that's because the battery-backed RAM inside of it died. There's been manga, books, and other types of media, but now the series is entering the tabletop RPG space. And it's not asking for crowdfunding or anything like that, but if you'd like to sign up for their newsletter, I'll have it all linked down below. But it's really impressive to see a franchise like this manage to thrive and survive over nearly 40 years of content creation. That's a dedicated fan base of people who clearly really love something that isn't in like the A-list zeitgeist. And sci fantasy from that early on still clinging on tight and riding that, I assume, Star Wars influence wave. Badass. All we know for now, though, is the game is planned to be available in 2025. If you would like to know how they are pitching said game, the advertisement reads, "Forge your hero in battle against the forces of eternal darkness. The Phantasy Star Tabletop RPG is a cooperative storytelling game where you and your friends take on the roles of heroic protagonists in a boundless universe based on the popular Phantasy Star video game series. Gather your party of galactic heroes and embark on quests to explore and safeguard the galaxy from cosmic threats, tyrannical empires, and ancient evils. But this is not the most niche, weird video game early fantasy stuff news we're covering today, because we also have Kien finally being released. You know, Kien, the game that was first announced in 2002 for the Game Boy Advance, it's out right now. With one of the longest video game developments in history, the game has officially been released, yes, for the original intended console, the Game Boy Advance. And just connecting it to the last story, the release of this game is further from its announcement than its announcement is from the creation of Phantasy Star in 1987. Took a while. 5 Italians, that's how the headline's putting it, so it's how I'm continuing it, made history as they were planning on being the first company in the country to develop a game for Nintendo's popular console. That did not happen, yet they have finally released it. In this game, you can apparently choose between a soldier sword slish-slash type and a magical splish-plow caster. And judging from the trailer, it looks like a pretty solid, fun, weird Game Boy game you'd probably pick up after you beat Pokemon for like the 30th time. Those were all Pokemon called consoles, we know that. I'm happy to say this isn't just going to be available for people who are able to dig their Game Boy Advance out of from wherever it is in an attic or closet somewhere. You can order the actual Game Boy cartridge, which is coming in a dark, clear gray, cool, but instead you can also buy a $10 ROM. The cartridge will run you $60, including like the full, everything you used to get with the Game Boy cartridges. That's pretty cool. Obviously it's a bit of a high price tag for something like this. You're doing it for the nostalgia. I was kind of mind blown when I saw that, but then I saw they're doing the $10 ROM and I'm like, that makes more sense. And that's exactly why I'm a big fan of Keeps. Look, it's pretty normal, natural you might say, to be a bit concerned about your hair as you approach your later years. I'm about to knock down 30's door and it's a big deal. But that means I want to be taking the best possible care of my hair. Thankfully, Keeps has got you covered. Look at that magic goo. I'm their first person to call it magic goo. They provide FDA approved treatment options, as well as a 2-in-1 gel that combines both of those treatments. Give it that good old They've helped over 1 million men keep their hair and have over 4,500 5-star reviews. Because Keeps will deliver this directly to your door in discreet packaging. For a special offer to get started, go to keeps.com/DanielGreen or click the link in the description down below. That's keeps.com/DanielGreen. Now for this next piece of news, we're gonna need a bigger video and a more original joke, because LEGO is going to be dropping a set for the Jaws boat, including Bruce the shark himself. Composed of 1,497 pieces, this fishy set includes the aforementioned deadly man-eating shark, as well as the iconic boat, the Orca. Coming with the minifigures of Quint, Police Chief Brody, and Hooper, finally, we will all be able to recreate some of the most splashing moments of cinematic history in LEGO form. These like movie-based sets have to be really selling well for LEGO, because we've seen quite a few of them over the last stretch of time, and I'm not opposed to it. Like outside of like, obviously they've been doing Star Wars, Lord of the Rings forever, but we've seen more of these like weird niche ones. That's not niche, obviously it's Jaws, but at the same time, like it's not something you would have expected from like a giant appeal to kids and adults. But in hindsight, kind of a great pick. I don't know, I'm mildly interested in this one. If I see it in the store and it's priced, oh, I'm just seeing the price now, it's $150. And it releases August 6th. Not gonna be picking this one up. I'm gonna be saving for the Bardur set, but if you view Jaws in a similar level of passion that I view Lord of the Rings, this might absolutely be up your alley. And good on LEGO for being like the most dominant toy company in the world still. Good job. Now, if you were watching this episode of Fantasy News and thinking to yourself, Daniel, I get that there's a lot of exciting releases coming down the road, but I want something that's gonna make me go, what? In the fantasy space, I got you, because the Legend of Zelda franchise has been mired in controversy over in the UK due to an absolutely ridiculous arrest that happened. A man was carrying a replica of the Master Sword in public, and now he's serving 4 months in prison. And you're thinking, okay, like, kinda, I get it. The UK and London has had some pretty severe, like, knifing issues, and you're not allowed to carry a knife in public. So a full-on master sword, yeah, okay, let's arrest that. No. It was 6 inches long, and it was that ejectable fidget toy you've probably seen online. The dull one. And I totally understand. There are issues with knives over there, and you're not allowed to have one. This is in a gray space. And possibly the guy should have gotten a slap on the wrist. Hey, you can't have that. There's issues going on. But 4 months in prison and a 150 euro fine? Are you fucking kidding me? That is like life-ruining time. That's not time your job just gives off and your girlfriend forgives. What the I had to like quadruple check. This is real. The man named Bray denies he was ever gonna use it as a weapon, and I believe him. You have to hold the hilt like this. This is bigger and longer. That's like getting, what? We take a zero tolerance to bladed articles in public, and Bray has fallen afoul of this. It is possible to find fidget toys that aren't 6-inch blades. It is possible not to walk down the street holding them out in front of you. With a bit more self-awareness, Bray could have avoided contact with us completely.
What did you just say?
Well, I do believe 4 months is a ridiculous sentence still. This did lead to an interesting discussion after I sent it to some UK friends of mine about whether or not someone should be able to walk around a city with a blade. If you have maybe the Sanderson Nightblood, don't walk around London with it. I'm not sure. Though I do want to end all of this by saying possibly the best conclusion to an article I've ever read is the latest game in the series, The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom, releases September 26th, giving Bray something to look forward to after he serves his sentence. And Chris, the author here, 10 out of 10, no notes. You are great at your job. And for those of you who are a fan of The Will of the Many, James Islington has posted an update in regards to its sequel, saying, "The Strength of the Few," that's the second book, has now officially been submitted for editing. The final draft stayed steady at 255,000 words, though, as always, that could change if we find room to cut. While I'm sure there will be improvements to make, there always are, I'm really happy with where it's at, and I don't think we'll need to make any sweeping structural changes from here. As far as the timeline, edits on a book of this size naturally take quite a while to come back, and then, once I've made my changes, I expect the publisher will start looking at locking in a release date as we proceed to copy edits, figuring out the cover art, etc. To set expectations early, think a 2025 release. For reference, The Will of the Many came back to me in May of 2022 and was published in May of 2023. The Will of the Many was one of my favorite books of the year it came out, and so for its sequel, I am salivating. And we are going to end the fantasy news by being teased by one of the best, George R.R. Martin, because in regards to the rumors circulating about a potential adaptation happening for Elden Ring, George R.R. Martin had the following to say. "Oh, and about those rumors, you may have heard about a feature film or television series based on Elden Ring, ... I have nothing to say. Not a word. Nope, not a thing. I know nothing. You never heard a peep from me. Mum. What rumor?" He did not write the full game, by the way. He was just someone who contributed heavily to world-building elements and things along those lines. If there is an adaptation, though, I would expect him to be involved maybe in the creative process, but at least in the branding and marketing, because, you know, he's one of the biggest names you can have in the fantasy space on board for something like that. Previously, Miyazaki, the creator of the game, has said that he's open to the idea of an adaptation, but it's not something he has the resources to do, so he'd want a big partner coming into the space. I don't know if he was referring to that kind of, you know, George R.R. Martin as the partner. I think he meant more like a studio, but we're seeing inklings. And usually in Hollywood, if these kind of rumblings are happening, that means there's some gears going forward. Whether or not those will actually accumulate to something worth our time, I have no idea. That's why I'm always pretty skeptical of this stuff. Sorry if the energy was weird for this episode of Fantasy News. I have a migraine and am powering through. You can go ahead and pick up my books. You can go ahead and pick up a paperback or hardback of my book, Witch's Sin, over at shop.wraithmark.com. And now, before we end the fantasy news, a quick shout out to a book written by a goblin within the Goblin Horde. One of you all. Take it away, Kayla.
And today's self-pub promo is The Forest and the Hill by Daniel Babatola, pitched as a cozy fantasy that is meant to induce wonder. Jamie finds his first ever friend, but there's one catch. He is a bug. Watch them as they go on a journey to unravel their pasts. But the real question is, how does the forest and the hill fit into all this? Check it out in the links down below.
Like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you'd like to support what I do here. Thank you, Keeps, for sponsoring today's video, and have a good one, y'all. Peace.